What's up, you guys? This is Rafaniel. You are now tapped in with the Stamper Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about entrepreneurship, business, and sharing tips on helping entrepreneurs grow and scale their business. I have an awesome guest for the show today. I am so happy that I got Vineet Sahni, co-founder of Garcia and Sahni, awesome estate planning attorney, just an all-around great guy. How you doing, Vineet?
Doing real well, Rafael. Thank you so much for having me today, man. I really do appreciate it.
Nah, man, the pleasure is all mine. I understand how busy you guys are. You guys are always rocking and rolling. So I really appreciate you for taking time out to be on the show today.
Of course. Anything for you, man.
Definitely, man. So just tell the audience a little bit, just give them a little bit about your background and what led you to specializing in estate planning.
Yeah, so my name is Vineet Sahni. I'm actually the co-founder, as you mentioned, of Garcia and Sahni. We are a law firm that specializes in estate planning. But Rafael, I'm going to tell you, I wasn't always going to be an attorney, right? Just by background, my my family, they're entrepreneurs as well. My dad owns multiple different companies. He's an engineer. And then my brother, he went to college too. He went and he got his engineering degree too. Mm-hmm. And he's been working in the family business since he was 16. And so I went and I applied to San Jose State as an engineer and I got accepted. Okay. But I think it was about 3 days before my first day of school, I picked up my brother's engineering book and I was like, I looked at it and I was like, man, I don't understand this. This isn't for me. And then I sat my family down. I said, look, guys, I don't think engineering's for me. I don't want to do it. And so then they looked at me. They're like, well, what are you going to do? I said, man, I think I'm going to make a really good attorney, you know? And they said, all right, let's do it. So I changed my major. I went into finance and then I went to law school right away. I graduated undergrad in 3 years. I graduated one of the youngest to graduate in my class. Then I went on to law school and I was the youngest to graduate in my class there. And then I went on to be a litigator. But, you know, the problem is with litigation is I was helping out so many companies. And despite saving hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars for these companies, it was in my opinion, it was very thankless. You know, they were very unappreciative of it. I didn't feel like I was really fulfilling anything. Mm-hmm. And that's when I had met my business partner, Lorna. And we just knew that there was something better we could do. And we both have had situations where family members have been through probate and things of that nature. So it was just a natural connect. And then we started doing our estate planning firm.
That is awesome. So I want to go back a quick second because, like you said, your dad is an entrepreneur, engineer. Your brother's an engineer, so you're supposed to be next in line, right? And so,
yes, sir.
Right, you know, a few days before you get started, you made the decision. Say, you know what, maybe this is not for me. You let your family know that this is not something that you want to do, and it's surprising to hear that they were really so supportive of you. I mean, can you speak to, you know, just having a family that was willing to support you? Because you hear those stories of families where they're like, hey, we prepared for this, for you to take this path to, you know, to this career path. So why would you just make this change all of a sudden? And most families are not as supportive. So can you speak to your family just being so supportive of your decision?
Yeah, no, I'll be honest with you. I think I owe everything that I've ever accomplished till this day. I've owed it to my family. You know, the reason for that is because in my family, in my entire family, extended family included, we don't have any lawyers. Most of them, a majority of them, are engineers. Right. Okay. And my dad came to the United States and did his master's in the US and then bought his own company because he was like, I want to create something long lasting for the family. So when I was going to tell him I didn't want to be an engineer, I was very nervous. But, you know, I still remember the conversation. We were sitting in my parents' living room. And when I told them, my dad said, hey, I'm all on board, but there's only so much that I can help you in this field with guidance because I don't have any knowledge. Right. So he says that I'm going to do everything I can do to support you. But again, if you were an engineer, there's maybe 10 times that I could support, you know, or help. But again, they're very supportive. They helped me out with schooling. They helped me out with, you know, getting tutors to take the LSAT. They were just always in my corner. And I think that emotional support was like the biggest thing I could ever ask for, you know?
Man, that's awesome. Yeah. Man. Yes. Salute to your dad, man, because it's always important, man, to just have that family in your corner. Because as we know, as business owners, it could be a lonely journey at times, especially if they haven't done what we've done before. So salute to him for that. I like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Definitely, man. So We got Garcia and Sahni. I want to talk about my experiences working with you guys in general. You guys have been incredible to work with. I mean, I think one of the biggest complaints that you hear from just working with clients is just talking to others, just working with clients in general. It's kind of hard to get attorneys on the phone. I can speak for you, for example. Every time that I've called you, you have answered the phone. You've been there to put out any fire, to solve any problem that's been absolutely needed, or answer any question that the client needed. And so that's going to lead me to, man, just sharing. Can you share with us just some common misconceptions around estate planning?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many misconceptions out there, and I think our firm prides ourselves in correcting some of those misconceptions, right? One of the biggest misconceptions is that they feel like that a trust or an estate plan is only for like high net worth individuals, right? But again, it's not about that. It's about being protected, and everybody in the United States over the age of 18 needs an estate plan to protect themselves, right? It's not based on asset valuation or anything of that nature. In addition to that, one of the biggest things is everybody feels that, hey, this is so expensive that I probably cannot afford it.
Right.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that sets aside Garcia and Sahni from all the other firms out there, is that we have very affordable pricing. In addition to that, we even offer affordable pricing plans too, right? To make sure that this could be even afforded by somebody who's, let's say, just receiving a set income through Social Security. Right? We want to ensure that they're protected. And then lastly, I think one of the biggest things is that people feel like they're not going to understand this situation or understand estate planning, because attorneys tend to make it super complicated, right? People try to sound smarter than they are. Right. However, at our firm, we try to make it so simple and just so easy to understand by taking this complicated topic, but making it simple to understand, so they end up wanting to purchase it at that point.
I get that. Yeah, because you hear, like you say, you hear those stories out there where one of those like pain points that people have around estate plans like this, man, that they think is just out of this world expensive, where they got to pay $6,000 to $8,000 to get started. And I think with you guys, you've been able to create just creating multiple tiers, like those multiple tiers of pricing, where like you said, the average family could be able to get a plan started. And then as they continue to progress within their career or making changes to their family, because they have that plan in place, all they have to do is just make those additional changes as they come along.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So what goes into, so as far as like estate planning, what are some key components into forming a well-rounded estate plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So to go to the misconception part real quick before moving on to that, is with respect to misconceptions, one of the biggest misconceptions out there is that, hey, if something happens to me, I'm not too worried because everything will just go to my spouse and to my children, right? People just naturally think that. But the problem is that's not always the case, right? And that's why an estate plan is so key. A typical estate plan of ours includes for our clients a will and a revocable living trust, a medical and financial power of attorney, a HIPAA authorization, right? Now, all these documents, they serve different functions. The will and the trust are the two main documents that come into play when you pass away. And the reason the trust is so important is because the trust is the document that can allow our clients to avoid probate. Whereas a lot of people just hear the term will from TV or social media, but what people don't know is that all wills go through probate. Right? So a will is not always the best document to have, whereas the trust would be better, right? In addition to that, we also need to protect all of our clients while they're alive too. And we do that with the medical financial powers of attorney and the HIPAA authorization. So for example, as people get older, we have all sorts of mental diseases, right? Like dementia and Alzheimer's. Right. Now, what people don't know is that when somebody suffers from one of those mental diseases, they can no longer make any medical or financial decisions for themselves, right? So everybody tells me on all my consults, Vinny, you know what? Don't even worry about it. My husband or my wife will make the decision, or my children, right? Somebody will just do it for me. But what people don't know is the power does not automatically go to anybody unless there's a power of attorney in place, right? So we need that documentation. So that's what we do. We protect everybody for their lifetime. And then after they've passed away, we take care of them as well.
Going back to the will, I've literally had people that have called me. And they will say, "Hey, I just found my grandma's will, and she passed away, but we thought we thought she didn't have one initially, but we actually found it in her couch. It's like I found it will be in the couch. Do you think that we can still proceed with making sure that her estate and everything is protected?" And me, I'm not an attorney. I can't give legal advice, but just common sense would tell me, it's like, I don't think a will alone would be enough to suffice, because again, you're not having those, like I said, the power of attorneys, the advanced healthcare directives, the HIPAA authorizations. Those are very important documents that you would need to ensure that, again, you don't have to go through probate. Because and I spoke about this before. I mean, some of the more like well-known people like Prince, Aretha Franklin, who's another person?
Winehouse.
Yeah, you would think Chadwick Boseman's another one. I think his probate case just got wrapped up not too long ago, I believe. Even Nate Dogg.
Yeah, Chadwick Boseman. The reason why in all of my presentations I talk about Chadwick Boseman is everybody knows Chadwick Boseman for the Black Panther. I actually love him because he was Thurgood Marshall. He was the best in that, I think. But Chadwick Boseman's situation is not uncommon, right? He had the same mentality as a lot of individuals. Chadwick Boseman had cancer, and he was aware that he had cancer, right? And he knew it was life-threatening. But rather than getting a trust in his estate plan, he just said, you know what? I'm going to marry my long-term girlfriend, and her and my parents will just split everything. It's not a big deal.
Right.
What people don't know is, until you actually research it, because it went through probate, it took nearly 2 years, even though nobody was fighting. And in addition to that, the parents got $1.15 million. The wife got $1.15 million, but the probate fees, the court fees, the attorney's fees was nearly $900,000. Right, nearly a third was in these fees, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's all simply because they didn't have a simple estate plan in place.
And you would think, and you would, like I said, his thinking, like I said, with all I gotta do is get married with my parents, it would get settled. Even though both parties were still on good terms, despite that. Still had to go into probate, and just imagine $900,000 being taken, and they're taking that off the top before the family's even receiving anything.
100%. They have to get paid first, right? And then there's another one, Rafael. I'm not sure if you read about Bob Lee.
That's the painter, right?
Bob Lee is the Cash App founder.
Oh yeah. He I think he passed away a couple of years ago, I believe. Yes.
Yeah, he passed away a couple of years. He owned Cash. He was the founder of Cash App, and he was stabbed actually in Oakland. And he was a young guy who didn't have a trust. But when he passed away, his company was worth $10 million, right? Yeah. But because he didn't have an estate plan, all of his assets were going through probate, and his family did not have funds to actually do a proper burial for him. Right. So what did they do? They turned to GoFundMe, right? And GoFundMe is not a retirement plan or an estate plan, right? So essentially, they tried to raise about $50,000, which they weren't able to do at the time when I was researching it. And even if they had raised $50,000, they don't get all of the 50 because GoFundMe takes a portion off the top of that as well, right? But if you can imagine that somebody who's worth $10 million, their family doesn't even have $50,000 because there's no estate plan.
Yeah.
Right. So it just goes to show you it's not really about valuation or worth or anything of that nature. It's all about education, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah, because like I said, the individuals that we just spoke about, they're not lacking for smarts or know-how. Right. Really savvy business people. It's just they just didn't take that time to get educated about protecting their foundation to make sure that their family gets what they're supposed to receive, if something happens to them.
100%.
So what's your approach to working with clients who are a little bit unsure or reluctant around estate planning? Like how do you approach those type of clients?
So at our firm, what we try to do is we treat everybody exactly the same, right? You could be somebody, low net worth, somebody skeptical, or somebody who knows it and somebody who needs to get it, right? But essentially what we do is we provide complimentary consultations to all of these individuals in order to help educate them on the topic, to tell them whether, first of all, not everybody needs one in the sense for a trust, but everybody needs the powers of attorney, but people don't know that. right? So again, what we do is in all of our consultations is we educate them on what are the documents and how is it going to protect them and why is it beneficial. Right. Then the other thing is we also provide them the opportunity cost that, look, if you do not want to proceed, this is going to be likely the outcome and the cost of that outcome through probate or through conservatorship or through any of these other legal matters, right? So all we can really do is we can't force somebody to proceed. We can only do our due diligence and help educating as many individuals as possible to change their lives and their families' lives.
Absolutely. Like I said, you've done your part already. So coming into that, like I said, they're a little bit unsure about the process. But after sitting with you, like you said, you're getting learn a little bit more about their situation, just educating them on what comes with estate planning, what this is the steps that you should take. And then from there, like you said, you're not going to pull their arm, but it's up to them on this. They have to make a decision on what to do. If they make a decision to proceed, then hey, you're going to be fine. But if you don't make the decision, and then God forbid something happens to you, then we get into that probate situation.
Yeah, and what I try to stress to all of our clients or when I'm doing education is I try to just inform everybody that if you do anything in this lifetime retroactively, it's always going to be more expensive than doing something proactively.
Absolutely.
Right? So it can be as simple as getting your tire changed, you wait for it to blow out versus you get it replaced early on, right? Or it can be as when you pass away, going through probate versus getting the estate plan put in place ahead of time.
Yep.
So anything in this world, there's nothing that's going to be cheaper retroactively than proactively.
Absolutely. So you got to be proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah, 100%.
So just speaking to that, dealing with the misconceptions and dealing with people that's a little bit reluctant, would that fall in line would you say that's well, let me reword this question. What would you say was some of your biggest challenges that you're facing when it comes to estate planning, as far as like working with your clients?
I think with the clients is, I think the problem is with a lot of our clients is that, they're just skeptical because, sometimes there may be a negative connotation with attorneys or past experiences, right? Again, there's some people who just have misconceptions too. Like, for example, I'll tell you, we work with a lot of international clients or first generation immigrants here. So when they come from their country, they're still trying to abide by those laws in their country, whereas the United States has different laws, right? A prime example of that is India, right? Within India, they actually have an act in India that says everything naturally goes to the spouse and to the children. However, you are no longer here, no longer in India. When you are in the United States, your assets, your home and everything is going to abide by our laws here. So to get them out of that mentality and understand here is an uphill battle in and of itself. Right. And then I think also for people to understand the value of being proactive versus saying even though you are spending money today, you're not going to see the immediate benefit today. You are going to see it in the future. I think some people have the difficulty in seeing that future valuation.
Absolutely. Okay.
Right. I think that's kind of the uphill battle.
I can see that because, like you said, with them coming from a different country, especially if they've been living there the majority of their life, they're so accustomed to those values, those laws and rules, and then they come here, they may be thinking like, okay, they may not have done as much research as you think they would, but they're probably going into it thinking like, oh, I'm married, I have my kids, the course would do right by me. And when you hear the judicial system is not going to always work in your favor. You're right. And so that's why you have to connect with people, attorneys like yourself, who know what to do, how to navigate these particular situations, so that way that your family and your estate is protected.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the last thing that I would probably mention, the uphill battle, would be maybe, I just did a presentation for about 100 people last night. And one of the questions that came up is one that comes up all the time. It's like, well, why don't I just go online and get it done? Right. And people always say that, right? Like, why don't I just go ahead and get it? And there's just so much wrong with that I can't even emphasize it all at once, right? But again, there's no such thing as one size fits all. Rafael, your situation is different than mine, different than all of your viewers. We're all in different situations, right? So how can one document take into consideration everything? It's impossible, right? There's also state by state differences as well, right? So again, Texas is different than Florida, different than California. So how can an online template take that into consideration?
Yes.
Right. And then the biggest thing is that I've actually, and we review a lot of these people who have done online ones, and we've corrected quite a bit of them, to be honest with you. The statistic is about 70% of online created estate plans actually go unfunded, meaning people don't transfer their assets or fund their trust with their assets because nobody told them that they need to do it, right? And so now there's a false sense of security, and their assets are still going to go through probate. There was no benefit. Versus when you talk with the natural attorney, they're going to provide you so much more guidance and assistance that an online, chat probably won't be able to provide you.
Absolutely.
So that's the other part of it.
Yeah, again, leading back to those phone calls. I've gotten phone calls from clients who got their documents online. They want to get their trust document signed. And then once we get to the signing table, they're asking me, they're asking our notaries, well, what does this mean? What is, and that's like I said, as notaries, we can't give legal advice. And then that leads us to asking them, was like, well, when you got these documents, did you have someone that at least consulted you on what these documents mean, or if this document even applies to your particular situation? And then they're stuck where they paid all this money for these, even though they try to go the cheaper route. But I look at it from a standpoint where if you're going to go that route of going online, I don't recommend it. It would be much better to make the investment in talking to an actual attorney, because at least with an attorney, they've done their due diligence. They know the ins and outs of these documents, and they're going to steer you in the right direction. Whereas opposed to where you didn't pay this money to go online, and now you're stuck figuring out going on YouTube and going on Google, trying to collect bits and pieces of information, and then it's no telling how long that's going to take, right? Yeah. Especially if you got to work, you got family, you got kids, you have so many different things pulling you in from every different direction, to where you're not really clear on these type of documents that you have in front of you, as opposed to talking to someone like yourself who's knowledgeable, who knows what gaps to help, how to fill in those gaps, how to make sure those clients avoid those certain pitfalls. Again, just what you said, we're going to funding a trust. Yep. Most people, like I said, they just think that, I got my estate plan documents, they're signed and notarized, I should be good to go. But because they didn't know that particular thing about funding your trust and additional steps that they would need to take, then those blind spots that they weren't really aware of, they come back to bite them down the line.
Yes, absolutely. And again, we do this so much and speak with so many individuals. And whenever we do somebody's consultation who already has a prior trust, we always ask them about, hey, well, did you transfer your property into the trust? Did you do the deed and so forth? And a majority of them, I can tell you, in our firm that we have come across, do not have it completed. Right. So now, but they've gotten this trust maybe 10, 15 years ago, and they've just been thinking for 10, 15 years that they're protected, and luckily nothing did happen to them. But if God forbid something did, again, those documents don't really hold any water, right? Absolutely. That's the issue.
Absolutely. That's great stuff. So I want to transition into just the field of estate planning and just how it's evolved over these last few years. I mean, prior to to the pandemic and to COVID, I did a few estate plan signings. I knew probably one or two people that even talked about just setting up their estate plan. It seems since 2020, we've seen more and more people getting educated about estate planning. I don't know, maybe it's because just catching up with technology, like how we're using this platform right now to communicate with each other. I mean, can you talk about how what's been the change with the estate planning, and where you could potentially see this going years from now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely see an uptick from pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic, right? I think the pandemic, in my opinion, shook the world. And Absolutely. It made people realize that, again, not having these documents in place have caused all these negative issues even way further down the road beyond the passing of the individual. Right. So the pandemic really made people realize that you could go really at any point in time. There was always clientele before that who were like, well, I kind of need it, or I think I should get it done, or, trying to get it done last minute. But when it came to the pandemic, people realized that it could happen at any moment and we just don't know. And so that's when we saw a really big shift in the education part of it, where people wanted themselves to get educated on this topic. Right. And that's when they started reaching out and they started getting educated and so forth on this. In the future, I see that this is I see a lot of newer, younger individuals getting educated now than just the elderly individuals.
Absolutely.
I think pre-pandemic, a lot of our clientele, or a lot of the clientele in general, were just maybe senior individuals, senior people trying to put their pieces together. But now I'll give you an example. I'm very proud of the fact that I met an individual. He's 19 years old. He doesn't own a home. He lives with his parents, right? And he did a full estate plan, giving away his gym equipment to his cousins. And he had life insurance, so he left that to nephews and nieces and things like that. But at that level of being 19 years old, he took the initiative because he heard and he understood the value of, hey, something could happen to him at any point in time. And he didn't want his family to worry, right? Because at the end of the day, what an estate plan does is it allows for a natural ease of transition. But nowadays, what it's doing is it's also providing a peace of mind to the family members, right? Absolutely. So now, Rafinha, you can probably think about it for anybody you've met that went through probate. Again, could you imagine a family member passes away, but you're getting phone calls from the attorney saying, oh, we have a hearing coming up, or we need this, we need that. Nobody wants to deal with that, right? You need to be with your loved ones. You need to be consoling individuals, and you need to be grieving. You don't need to be worrying about going to court.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that's what the trust does. The trust allows for automatic transfer of assets with ease, with no issues, no court, no attorneys. And it allows you the time to just be with your family or be with your loved ones. So you're purchasing peace of mind now. And I think people are starting to understand that.
Yeah, you can't put a price on having a peace of mind.
Exactly.
You can't put a price on that. I just recently lost a family member, and I can only imagine, man, just what he's going through right now. You know, my cousin, just imagine what he's going through, and then have to worry about having to make sure his son's bills are paid and make sure you can't even breathe properly because you have these other responsibilities that's pulling at you, and you can't go to nobody else. Like, you have to make sure these things are taken care of.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, you know, again, what happens is during probate as well, like, assets are frozen. So if you don't have the liquidity personally to take care of those assets or keep the mortgage going or anything of that nature, these assets could be sold and you could potentially lose them, right? Or like I have a client right now where the husband worked for a tech company and he did not list his wife or his child as the beneficiary, and he was the sole breadwinner because she was laid off a while ago, right? So now people don't even understand that assets don't even automatically go to the spouse. It's going through spousal probate. But luckily, the only reason she's able to continue to afford living in the Bay Area and afford to, you know, pay her bills is because luckily the husband had life insurance, which paid out within 30 days because she was listed as the beneficiary. So she has breathing room while we're going through this process.
Yeah.
Right. But not everybody understands that logic. But again, with education comes that change in the future.
Absolutely. And like I said, that's the benefit of doing things like this, right? Where we're able to put this information out there to the audience for people to know. So that way they can say, it's like, well, because previously up until this point, it was kind of, you either had to know someone that was within this field, or you may have to do a little bit of networking, like I said, with leveraging technology, with podcasting, and just leveraging content. I mean, we're not lacking for information these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be honest. I have I think I even told you my daughter was born on Thanksgiving, right? My first child. And my wife and I did our estate plan for her before when we found out, we were like due. We updated all of our documents and just didn't do the signing or anything until we knew her name and what we were going to, you know, her date of birth. But it's just so important to be proactive about it to ensure that, again, even from day one, they are protected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's say we have someone, got a family, husband, wife, they have children, they're homeowners, and they're saying, okay, I think now is the time we need to get something in place. What advice would you give them as far as what is the type of, as far as they're looking for an attorney? What are some qualities or some things that they should be looking for before hiring an attorney and trusting the attorney to handle setting up their estate planning?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely feel that the attorney that they speak with needs to provide them all of the documentation, right? Because what happens is if they're doing something like a la carte, like just getting a trust but no powers of attorney, or a will but no trust, maybe they might not be fully protected, and ultimately that's not a benefit to the client. Right. Now, for that client that you just told me, obviously they need the powers of attorney and everything. They need the trust for the property, but they even need a will for the guardianship, right? Because we need to ensure guardianship is designated. So if the firm or if the attorney is not providing you everything, I highly feel that that's a red flag. In addition to that, if they're not educating you as to how to fund the trust or what are the next steps after the trust is notarized, I think that's a red flag as well, right? And then lastly, one of the biggest things that I feel separates our firm is communication. Like, as you said, Rafael, I'll pick up your call day or night, right? Obviously, unless I'm in a meeting or with some other client. But again, we try to be as communicative as possible, as soon as possible. Because at the end of the day, not only are you helping the client immediately, but you need to be available to help them out in the future in case they need any answers or questions or any additional services too. So if the attorney's not providing that, I feel that that's a very big red flag as well.
There you go. That's exactly what like I said, I think that's exactly what they should be doing. Like I said, again, going back to you, just having an open line of communication. I mean, it's just so important to just have someone they can get on the phone, especially with like notaries. Notaries are notorious for not answering the phone. And it's just so important to just have someone who you could talk to, because again, the education piece is important, and there's some things that we don't know, and we're relying on these professionals to make sure that we are educated as possible to make an educated decision. So I like that a lot. Before we head out, a question that I always like to ask our guests is, where do you see Garcia and Sahni within the next 5 years?
I love that question. I actually have the roadmap for Garcia and Sahni for the next 5 years, right? Okay. At Garcia and Sahni, we are looking to just, we are trying to educate as many individuals as possible across the United States, right? We are very blessed at Garcia and Sahni to not just be located in California, but we're able to do estate planning across the U.S. And so we are looking to grow all our markets to make sure everybody's going to be protected. We are also growing in different languages and different demographics as well to ensure that, again, we can help all clients, even immigrants, in different languages. And one of the biggest pushes we're trying to do is in the next couple of years is we want to make sure that we're trying to get to people sooner rather than later. Absolutely. Right? And again, the younger, when people can get educated, they might not know the value today, but if they get educated on it, at least it'll be in the back of their mind to come back later on and hopefully help protect their families.
I love it. I love it. Vinny, I want to say thank you for being on the pod today. I'm going to make sure I get your links, make sure people get the consultation. They're going to be in the description below, because we need more people to get educated on this and to get their estate planning in place. I want to thank you all for watching this interview today. I hope you guys took a lot of key points from here and apply this into what you're doing in your life. Make sure you like the channel. Make sure you subscribe to, make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. And until next time, you guys, have a great one.
Thank you.